Good afternoon. My name is Alfonso Pacheco, and today I will be discussing the reasons why mergers and acquisitions should succeed, but also why they often don't. One of the biggest things that come with mergers and acquisitions, and what every firm should do when thinking of acquiring or merging, is to do due diligence. Oftentimes, firms will take due diligence to bank accountants and lawyers rather than taking the time themselves to look into every aspect of the target company. And by looking into every aspect, I do mean every aspect. Financially, looking into the market, seeing where it stands potentially, how is it doing against competitors, all of that. It's very important to look at those things so that way you can determine a very powerful idea of how this targeted firm will benefit the current firm. Failure to do due diligence often leads to obvious mistakes and can cause long-term detriments to the value of the firm. A good example of this would be Mattel, which failed to do proper due diligence when merging with the Learning Company. They didn't do any kind of due diligence and didn't realize that the Learning Company hadn't produced a good game in several years. Their last one being Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, but again, that was years ago, and nothing had come out of it since then. So they ended up wasting a lot of money and getting almost nothing back in return. Another reason why mergers should work but often don't is that often CEOs fail to understand the acquired product and the market that it's competing in. This is kind of a sub-portion of due diligence. Than any asset acquired in mergers should have already been heavily researched and multiple strategies developed in order to take full advantage of the asset in the market and what it competes in. And a good example of this is the Quaker merger, where it failed to properly research the advantages of Snapple and their tea products. They tried to put it more into supermarkets and tried to, have it compete against other drinks when it mostly made its profits in small stores like gas stations and convenience stores. This merger was so disastrous that after about little over 2 years, Quaker sold Snapple, and after doing the math, during that time that they owned Snapple, they were losing about $1.6 million every day. Another important thing is to know when to hold them and fold them. Basically, when to keep going and when to walk away from a merger or acquisition. Even if due diligence is done, CEOs often receive external pressure to make the merger work, even if they know that it will fail to bring any real value to the firm. One example was the fact that bankers and accountants and lawyers that have been hired to make the merger possible, they all have incentive to obviously keep pushing forward and may advise to do so because that's how they get paid. Press coverage will also, if they catch wind of the merger, will also do a great deal of coverage on it, and it will pressure CEOs to continue with the merger because obviously failure to make a merger work or walking away from the table would give the impression of weak leadership, even if the opposite is the case. Regardless, CEOs should be still focused on the benefits of the firm, however it may look to outsiders, because that is, of course, the CEO's job. What's also important is to understand a target firm's culture. Nobody likes change, especially employees, which is why it's essential for a merged firm's new management to take necessary time to understand the previous culture and to integrate the employees into the new one. Failure to do so often creates tribal-like loyalty to the old way of businesses, and many cause friction between coworkers and employees with management. A good example of this was the merger between Sprint and Nextel, which caused a severe culture clash, and part of that had to do with the fact that their headquarters were in two separate locations, Nextel being in one and Sprint being in the other. Probably one of the worst mergers of all time would probably be the Penn Central merger, where they failed to do any of the previous things that they should have. They took 10 years to finish merger negotiations, but didn't do any real due diligence or come up with any strategies on what to do with the firm. Also, during this time, the market trended more towards automobiles and trucks, making both the transportation industry and the shipping industry weaker for trains, which is what they were all about. They also had huge culture clash, and in the end, they ended up in bankruptcy, becoming one of the biggest merger failures in history. It basically comes down to that CEOs need to do their due diligence, need to come up with effective strategies, and slowly but surely integrate their new goals with the employees of the acquired firm so as not to cause friction. Thank you so much.